So today we're having a live session and we've invited some very special guests from the Supreme Court of Pakistan. All right, so today our session is going to be very special and we're going to be talking about the Law Clerkship program. Here we have with us the three judicial law clerks, Mr. Agha Furqan, Ms. Neha Makhdoom, and Ms. Alizeh Akbar. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having us.
I hope you're all well. How is your day going?
Jay, it's been wonderful.
All right.
I'm sorry there's some music behind me. I actually could.
That's okay. That's all right.
Okay.
And Miss Neha, are we audible?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you.
All right.
Everything's
Okay.
fine.
So I'm just going to give my viewers and our students a very short description of the clerkship program. So basically, the clerkship program of Pakistan Supreme Court aims to cultivate the next generation of lawyers and jurists of Pakistan by providing a unique opportunity for professional growth and unparalleled mentorship. So today, our judicial law clerks are going to be explaining how their day-to-day life in the Supreme Court is. What do they get to learn? What challenges they have to face, and any questions that you may want, you can, we have a comment section. So anything that pops up in your mind, you can have it in the comments, and our guests will be happy to answer. So I think without any further ado, we should start with our session. So we would start with Miss Alizeh Akbar.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes. So can you tell us something about the process, the application of the Supreme Court Law Clerkship Program? When does it start? When does it end? When is the deadline for the applications? And some of your experience as well.
So I think Neha might be the better person to answer this question. Since she's worked closely with the committee. So
All right.
I think the Neha should be the one answering this question.
Of course, like whichever answer, like whichever question I ask, and whoever is more fit to answer, and is who's more relevant and connected to that question, can voluntarily answer. My questions are for all three of you. So, Ms. Neha, can you answer my question then?
Yeah, absolutely I can. So the first thing to note is to anyone watching this is that the application deadline is actually 11:59 p.m. of the second. So from
Hmm.
today, you have about 2 days to
Two
complete your
days.
application. But and the application is content heavy, so you have to send a CV, you have to answer 4 questions which total to just about 2000 words. You have to write a personal statement, you need 2 references, and you need to fill out an application form and all supplementary documentation. All of that information is detailed on the website, but
Okay.
in my opinion 2 days is enough to complete the application. It's a
Yeah.
bit of a push, but you can absolutely get it done in 2 days.
Yeah. All right. So everything is available on the
Yeah.
website, right? So, since when are you
Yeah.
the judicial law clerk in the Supreme Court?
So I've been working, actually, it's probably good that I introduced myself. I've been at the Supreme Court for about 10 months now.
Okay.
I am working with a judge, obviously. I think it's improper kind of to say what judge you're working for at such a public forum. But
Of
other than
course.
that, I before this, I was an associate at MCA Law Associates in Karachi. I've completed the bar. I actually studied politics at Warwick before I
Um,
converted to law, and
mhm.
that's basically me.
All right. That's a very impressive qualification background. All right. So, Miss Elise, would you like to introduce yourself?
So I am Alizeh Akbar. I actually did University of London External from TMUC Lahore. After my graduation, I started working in Lahore at Bhandari Nakwi Riyaz. And after
Mhm.
that, I applied for the clerkship, and now I've moved to Islamabad for the program.
All right. And Mr. Furqan? Can you give us a brief introduction about yourself?
Hello, everyone. I am Agha Furqan. First of all, it's such a great honor to be live streaming at TMUC. Before I give my introduction, I would want to say something that as of now, right now, I am thinking about the very first class that I had in TMUC of law. And I graduated in 2020. I did my undergrad from TMUC Islamabad. In 3 years down the line, it's 2023. I'm a law clerk at the Supreme Court. So it's a great honor to be here. Thank you for having me.
All
In
right.
2020, I completed my undergrad LLB from TMUC, as I just said. Then I moved to London to do my bar from BVP University, Lincoln's
All
Inn.
right.
I just completed my bar last year, and I moved back to Pakistan in September, and luckily got into the clerkship program. Currently, it
Mm-hmm.
has almost been a year that I'm working in the Supreme Court as a law
Okay.
clerk.
All right, all right. That's very proud. That's a very proud moment for us, actually, that two of our judicial law clerks today are TMUC alumni, and
I,
it's a very proud moment for
I
TMUC.
I would actually want to add something here as well. So
Yeah.
luckily, last year we had three TMUC alumni at the clerkship. I think
Oh,
the largest number of clerks that we had from one institute was TMUC. So
okay.
big deal, yeah. That's pretty
That
amazing.
is a big deal. That's actually a big deal, and I'm very, very proud to be a part of this institute. I am so proud that our students are making it so big.
Definitely, Ji. Bilkul, I agree. I completely
Gee.
agree.
All right. So let's get on with my question. So, how is this judicial program? What would you like to tell our students about this program? Because Miss Neha Makhdoom has talked about the application process, that everything is available on the website of the Supreme Court. And all you need to do is that you have to have a very good CV and your personal statement and answer 4 questions, right? So, what is the next step? What happens after
Yeah.
you've applied?
Well, to be honest, we can get a little bit into the specifics of the application itself. There's a couple of like basic things to avoid. So don't use chat gpt in to answer the questions. Don't plagiarize. Have your references actually be written by the person uh, who you've named. Don't write your reference yourself, because I think that's a pretty obvious glaring flaw. Also, I think a big thing to remember when you're filling out the application is that you're not applying for any job. The biggest part, the most important part of this job is trust and integrity.
Yeah.
And so if you disturb that in the slightest in your application process, that's going to reflect very, very badly on you.
That for sure.
So yeah, yeah. So just be honest, be yourself. The committee and the coordinators this year, I know they're looking for people who are good personality fits for
Hmm.
this job, because I've mentioned this in another interview, and I'll mention it again. This job is not for everyone. Not if you think that you're gonna come here and get a great reference for your LLM. Frankly, this is not the job for you. This job is requires the biggest lifestyle change that perhaps any young law job could ask of you. I mean, I'm originally from Karachi. I had to move to Islamabad for this job. Um, to succeed in this job, you have to be confident, you have to be self assured, you have to understand the limits of who you are when you're talking to Supreme Court judges, right? Because we think that, so when you first start, you're like, wow, all of these like big judges, how are you going to talk to them? But after a little while, it becomes a pretty normal thing. So we are seeking out specific, I mean, there are specific things about this job that you can make obvious on your application, and I would say make those things obvious.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like I have, because I'm very, I'm always using Instagram, and I've been like following these pages where they have like tricks and tips to improve your CV and your Excel skills and your Word and Office skills. So I really like looking at these things. So I've come across like this very morning there was a Chat GPT app where you could transform, like you can just give them the keywords and the places that you've worked in, and they could make a whole CV for you. So I think that is something that our students should abstain from, because that is, first of all, it's unethical, I would say.
I
If you
I
work
would like to
somewhere.
add something here. So the clerkship, is I personally believe that it is one of the most competitive places that you can be uh, when you're a fresh law grad, and there are, I know some people who take the application process not that seriously. Like Neha just pointed out, there have been some. I know this for a fact that I personally know a few folks who have used ChatGPT to fill in their applications. Now, you need to understand that the committee of the law clerkship comprises two Supreme Court judges. And I know, I mean, as a litigator, as a student of law, the Supreme Court is the very end of litigation. You know, after you have practiced for 2 or 3 decades, is when you get to appear in the Supreme Court. Like a minimum of, if you, when you consider doing your LLB, then lower courts, then high court, and then almost about 10 to 15 years later, you get to the Supreme Court. And then you get to appear in front of a Supreme Court judge. But in the clerkship program, you're a fresh law grad. You probably don't even have your lower court license, and you're getting to work directly with a Supreme Court judge. Now that's a very big deal. And to imagine to take the course of using the chat apps like ChatGPT or not taking the application seriously, I think it's disrespectful to the program itself, to the judges, and so it is of utmost importance. Now, I'll tell you my personal experience when I was doing the applications. I almost about 2 to 3 weeks I completely dedicated to the application, and I was last year in. I was in London. I was doing the bar course when I got to know about the clerkship, and right after the my bar exams, I started doing the application. When I moved, I went on a trip to Europe with my friends, but then I had to lock myself in a hotel room and do the application process for like 3 or 4 days and complete my application. So that is how seriously you need to take the application. It's not
Yeah.
something to be taken lightly.
Hmm. Exactly. And
And then
the
on
more
top of that, if
organic
you're not,
it is.
sorry, not to interrupt,
Yeah, you
but
please continue.
a big thing to make note of is a big part of our day-to-day job is writing. So if you can't write a couple of 500 word essays, all that does is make evident to the committee that this is not a job you should be in. If you're
Yes.
plagiarizing or if your essays are below standard, a big part of this job is having uh, obviously the working language of the court is English, is having a strong
Yeah.
grasp of the English language and being able to articulate what you want to say um, easily. And so if you're not writing
Yes.
your own essays, that's immediately a red flag that, oh, this person is not
That
suited to this
is
job.
absolutely, absolutely. So
I
basically,
think
I believe, yes, Miss
I'm so
Alizeh.
sorry for cutting you off.
No, that's okay. I'm sorry.
I think
Yes.
before we move forward on the application, we should kind of talk about the clerkship program itself so that people who don't know about the program can
Yeah.
also know कि मतलब क्या होता है and why we're talking about this application process to begin with. So I'll
That.
briefly explain what the clerkship is, and then Neha and Furqan can add to it if they have something else. So clerkship basically is a mentorship after you graduate. The normal way that people take is that they start working at a law firm where you come under the mentorship of a senior lawyer. But with the clerkship, within the 2 years of your graduation, that is one of the requirements of the application, that you cannot have graduated more than 2 years ago. Your last law degree or any degree should not have been more than 2 years ago. So at a young stage, at a young as in a young age, you start working at the Supreme Court under the mentorship of one of the honorable judges of the Supreme Court. So normally, each judge has one law clerk, and you work directly with your judge that you're allocated to. The allocation is done based on whatever criteria the committee has. So, as law clerks, you don't get to really have a say as to which judge you want to work with. Your application is looked at, your interview is considered, and then you're put with the judge that you will make the most appropriate fit with. So that is how you were allocated, and after you're allocated, you work with the judge on whatever chamber work that they give you. It could be anything that your judge wants you to do. So you're primarily assisting a judge. A lot of the work that we do is research. So you're working on issues that have come from the trial court to the appellate court to the high court and then all the way to the Supreme Court. And then you're looking at legal issues. You're looking at the entire litigation history along with your judge. And then you help your judge out in whatever way that they want. So that's primarily the main job. And on top of that, since judges of the Supreme Court are often traveling to different registries of the Supreme Court, so there's one in Quetta, Peshawar, Karachi, Lahore, and then the main one in Islamabad. So whenever your judge travels, you travel with them. And again, wherever you are, you have to just do as your judge tells you to.
All
And
right.
you have to maintain confidentiality. That is a big part of the job. You cannot, so we're kind of restricted, like we cannot tell you exactly what we do, all three of
Yeah.
us, or any other law clerk that you speak to.
Yeah.
His confidentiality at the Supreme Court is a big thing. We cannot discuss anything that we work on because that's something that is taken very, very seriously. Neha Furqan, if you guys think there's something we should add to this, please go ahead.
I have to add to that. Confidentiality is a huge part of the job, and it's a chamber thing. So even if like even if Alizeh and I are on the same bench working on the same thing, I can't tell Alizeh what I'm working on, and she can't tell me what she's working. Just a complete Chinese wall between chambers. There's no overlap between our work. And another thing that will bar you, by the way, that Alizeh mentioned, you have to be 2 years out from graduation. You also have to be under the age of 30, unfortunately, to qualify for the
Okay.
program. But barring that, uh, I think this is an incredible program. I was really struggling in litigation to find something that, to find my, what I like to call love for the law. But this has been a really good experience in helping me find that joy for the law. And also, judges don't just engage with you intellectually, they also engage with you on a like ethical level. So your judge kind of
Absolutely.
teaches you their way of doing things. And I think it would be amiss to say that this is just a job. Most people have moved to Islamabad for this job. So Furqan and I have both moved. Alizeh is also moved from Lahore. So you kind of collect
Okay.
here with just about the brightest young lawyers in the entire country, which creates a very, very interesting environment in the sense that, so for example, we're all from different cultures, we're all from different communities, different educational backgrounds, different family lives, like at different levels on society, levels of society. And then all of a sudden you're put in this place and told, you guys are the best of the best, and now figure out a
Yeah.
way to get along. So
Yeah.
it's a very interesting experience in that way as well. uh, and you get to travel a lot, which you otherwise ordinarily wouldn't get to do, especially as a woman in Pakistan.
Yeah.
I've seen most of Pakistan while I've been working at this job, and I've only been here 10
There
months.
are some cultural constraints that women do have,
Yeah,
and it one of them is like traveling out of station
yeah.
with your board colleagues.
Yeah,
I
and it's not just a work thing as well. That's the thing, right? It's also a friendship
Yeah.
thing. You get to build these friendships that you probably have for the entirety of your legal career with people who are probably going to be the top lawyers in the next 15, 20 years. And then if on top
Yeah.
of that, if you add the added layer of, I would never have lived independently in Pakistan, and I think Alizeh will say the same, if it wasn't for this job. Uh, I moved to Islamabad by myself, and as a woman, I would never have lived alone in Pakistan had it not been for this job. And that, in and of itself, has been an interesting experience. Plus, the opportunity when you're working this job, you get the opportunity to live in Islamabad, which slowly has become my favorite city in Pakistan. Like everyone's like, "Oh, Karachi is so great." It's really not. Like Islamabad is way better. Um,
I love Islamabad.
yeah,
I love
it's so
Islamabad
nice
so
here.
much. I wouldn't trade it for anything.
And
Yeah,
then also the networking opportunities that this job presents are unmatched to any other young lawyer
absolutely.
job.
Absolutely.
You meet every big lawyer, every journalist, every judge, every, like, politicians are coming into court. So in that way, so it's not just an intellectual or work exercise, it's also a social thing, it's also an independence thing, it's a networking thing, it's, an ethical thing, because you have to maintain confidentiality. So there's a lot of
Yeah.
elements to it. So it's a
Yeah.
very holistically uh, a very holistic experience in general to be at the clerkship, and I recommend it to every young lawyer now. I don't
Exactly.
think I would be enjoying working in Pakistan as much if I was not in this job currently.
Exactly. And actually, when you graduate and then suddenly, of course, after a process of application, you are in the apex court of Pakistan. You're in the Supreme Court. So there comes a surge of responsibilities that really empowers you. So I think that that's amazing. The empowerment, the idea of working in the apex court of Pakistan right after graduating is
You're very right, Maha. You're very right. So basically, Alizeh and Neha have covered everything, but I would just like to add one, one thing that I personally have experienced. See, it is such a great privilege and honor to be working at the Supreme Court, as I previously pointed out. For you to represent yourself, represent a case in the Supreme Court in front of a Supreme Court judge, it takes you about 15 to 20 years at least. And that also if you are a good, successful lawyer in the country. A lot, like the majority of the lawyers don't even get an opportunity to get into the Supreme Court, to get a Supreme
true.
Court
That's
license,
true.
let alone to work with a Supreme Court judge. And that also when you and
Yeah.
some of us, this has been our first job. There are a lot of young lawyers who come into the clerkship. They have done internships, but they haven't really worked. And the first person that you get to work with, like Alizeh said, the first mentor that you have. So in the legal career, one of the most important things for any successful lawyer, if you go out and ask them, is that they had a good mentor at the very beginning. And to have a mentor who is a Supreme Court judge, I mean, that's the end. That's where you end.
Yeah.
That's where you retire. That's when you have achieved
That's the
everything
apex
in within the
actually.
Supreme Court. And someone like that is mentoring you, is teaching you, and you are assisting them. That's one of the greatest feelings. I mean, every time when a judge reaches out to his law clerk and the law clerk helps him with whatever work he has asked for, that sense of achievement. And I personally believe that you will not get that sense of achievement at such a young age anywhere else.
Yeah, true. That's right. So, thank you so much, all of you, for telling me, like, running me through the clerkship program, what it is, and how it builds a young lawyer, and how it equips the lawyer. So, the fresh graduate, actually. All right. So, like Mr. Furqan, you just mentioned earlier during the when we were discussing the application process, you mentioned that you do not need to have a session courts license. Am I right? Did I hear you right? All right. So basically, I believe I can't. I'm sorry. There is a glitch.
So you don't need to have a sessions court license. All that you need
So the
to apply for the
requirement
program is to have
to
completed your law
qualify
degree.
as a law clerk, you just
I I think we should wait for a minute so that Mr. Furqan can get his signals back.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Hello. Yes,
Hi. Hi. Hello. Am I back?
yes, you are.
So, for
Yes,
you to
you
be
are.
eligible for the clerkship, you have any law degree within the span of 2 years, and your age should not be above. Neha, please correct me if I'm. It's the age limit is 30.
30. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the
Uh,
only requirement. That's the eligibility requirement for the
So,
clerkship.
so this means that, of course, when a student has graduated, and it should not be a graduation that is more than 2 years old, right? So a student that has graduated in 2021 and not older than that can apply. So we have graduates of 2021, 2022, and the graduates of 2023. Am I right? All right. Okay,
So
so
this year,
basically,
I think 21, 22, and 23 only, because we were batch of 2020 when we applied, and
yeah.
we were not eligible for this year's application round. So people who
Okay.
graduated in 2021 before, say, August of 2021, in during August or before August of 2021 to
Mm-hmm.
apply.
All
That's how it
right.
is. Yes.
All right. So your graduation should not be more than 2 years old.
I would also add here that, for instance, if you have done your undergrad in 2020, but you have done
Hmm.
your master's in 2021, you're still eligible. So, like the last degree that you have done should be not more than 2 years ago.
And this applies to bar at law or the legal practice course as well.
Yeah, yeah. Any law
All
degree.
right.
Yes.
All right, all right. That's a relief actually. So students who went abroad or they planned on doing their masters or any vocational training, so they can also apply. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. So basically, the application needs to be super strong. The application needs to be very, very well built, and because fresh graduates do
Yeah.
not have a very strong CV, they don't have a very strong CV with a lot of.
So I don't think that's necessarily something to be concerned about
Yeah,
if you feel as if you don't have uh, that much to put on your
exactly.
CV. Your application should more uh, says that you can be a fresh law grad and do well at it,
Yeah,
or you can be someone who has 2 years of experience in litigation and be good at it. It's more of
ex-
a who are you and how do you people, and your application just has to reflect that you whether you think, and you have to put your best foot forward here, is whether you're suited
yeah,
for the role. The real um, hard part of this application process is actually not the application itself, it's the interview. um,
yeah.
so the interview is actually taken by two Supreme Court judges and the coordinators,
Mhm.
and for in and of itself, it's a very enriching and empowering experience, like as a young person, to be sitting in front of these two Supreme Court judges. And I think I speak for all three of us when I say we all had very different experiences in our interview. We got asked very different questions.
Yeah.
They look at your application. They're not going to ask you anything random. They're only going to ask you things that you've mentioned in your application, or questions that they think are relevant to whether you are well suited for
And
this
any kind
program.
of academic questions, academic
So
based.
they do. So if, for example, you've talked about, say, the right to movement in your
Hmm.
application, they might ask you what's the foremost right to movement judgment that's come out of the Supreme Court. Or if you're talking about
All
right to
right.
life, they might turn around and be like, oh, what article of the Constitution protects your right to life? Um, so
Yeah.
that is absolutely a possibility. They can ask you academic questions. It's just a matter of whether you can answer them. And in that moment, to be honest, it's quite terrifying, because at least for our application process, basically
Hmm.
the interview happens at the Supreme Court. So you have to
Okay.
come to Islamabad for the interview.
Yeah.
You're put in a room with 22 other people. Everyone is nervous and terrified.
And they're
Uh,
having chills, like I am
yeah,
having them right now just by thinking of it.
yeah. And then
Yeah.
also the thing about the Supreme Court, and this is a tip actually someone gave, I found out from an interview before my, someone gave, so clerks gave an interview before I went for my interview and I watched that interview. So you're not allowed to bring your phones into the Supreme Court. And so there's a lot of waiting around for
Yeah.
6 hours. Everyone's just awkwardly trying to make conversation. So the big tip that I can give you for your interview is bring a book because you have no idea how long you're going to be sitting there.
All right.
Um,
So you can
and that
bring
can
any kind
serve
of
to do
book.
well, so it might serve the next
Okay.
person well.
Yeah,
Sorry?
you can bring any kind of book. You can even revise how you've prepared for the interview,
Well,
or you
that's
can
Yeah,
bring.
you can bring your application, you can bring the constitution, you can bring
All
whatever you
right.
want that you think you might need in your interview.
I
And
would also like
actually,
Okay.
to
a
add.
big part of this.
I would also like to
Sorry,
add
go
that
Alizeh.
while they can ask you academic questions, but those will
Mhm.
also pertain to your application. If you have spoken about right to life or right to movement, is only when they're asking you, कि, "अच्छा आपने ये लिखा हुआ है, tell us the main judgment of the Supreme Court on it." So you can't not have, like, if you've written an answer, this is a
Mhm.
tip for the application, that when you're filling out your answers to the questions that the application has, you should do your research to the fullest. Not only are you answering the questions on the application, you're also preparing yourself for the interview later. So just only because you did not use a certain part of your research in your application does not mean that it may not become like it will not become relevant at the time of your interview. So it's always
All right.
necessary to do your research as much as possible for the interview process, for the application process, so that you can use it later for your interview round as well.
All right. Okay. So how many applicants? Do you know how many applicants are there from throughout Pakistan?
So last
So
year we
last year,
so last year
continue
we
Alizeh.
had over 850 applicants, out of which
Okay, that's
46
a good number.
yeah, out of which 46 were shortlisted for the interview,
Hmm.
and
Okay.
11 of us were shortlisted, and 3 of those were TMUC alumni, as pointed out by Furqan.
Wow. I
That's
think we
how
should
it.
all clap for TMUC.
That's how
I
it.
so for the interviews, Alizeh and Neha again have covered everything, but one thing is for sure that you can never be fully prepared for the interview.
I'm sorry, Mr. Furkan. Can you please repeat that? Hello,
Yeah, can you hear
Mr.
me?
Furkan.
Hi, can you hear me?
There's just been a slight glitch, and I missed what you were saying.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, you're audible.
Yeah, yeah, I can. However, your
So
video is stuck.
what I was saying was that you can never be fully prepared for the interview, and you
Hmm.
you need to you need to know your application
True.
inside and out. You need to know you need to know Supreme Court judgments. You need to know latest developments of law. A judge can ask you anything from within your application. They can ask you about your extracurricular activities, whatever you have written. They can ask you about your personal interests. They can ask you about music. They can ask you about Supreme Court judgments, anything from your application. So it is always better to be as prepared as you can be for the interview, because you need to know that two Supreme Court judges are going to be taking the interview, and you know that when you enter the room of the interview, it's a very um, the ambience is quite daunting. It's you know you obviously have been waiting for so long. A lot of
Absolutely.
people, a lot of the shortlisted candidates, some of them are coming out happy, some not so happy. So you need to be confident, and you need to give your best shot.
Yeah. But at the same time, I'd like to add
That was
that the
actually the
Supreme
next
Court
thing I was
judges
gonna
know.
say. Sorry, continue.
Hey, hello.
I'm sorry.
Guys, I sincerely apologize, but
I think we have a
I have
slight
a
connection error.
I have a bad
I think we
internet
should take a
connection.
moment.
I'll try to join you guys back. Please continue with the interview. I'm going to try and find a better location to connect the internet. So you guys please
All
continue with this
right.
video.
Okay. So we
Yeah,
can then continue. All right.
please continue. Please continue.
See you soon.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Sure. All right, so I just wanted to tell our students who are watching right now that I know this might seem a bit scary that the two Supreme Court judges are going to be interviewing you and they can, ask you anything. But at the same time, the Supreme Court judges know that you are fresh graduates and you
Yeah.
have just graduated from the law the program, and at the same time they will be only asking you stuff that you have written down in your application. For example, if there is something that you have mentioned on your CV, so they're going to be asking questions you about that so that they can know how organic and how genuine this CV is. So this is something for my students. God be with you. It's everything is going to be fine. It's going to be a good interview, and during, like, even making it to the interview is an achievement in its own. So this is really big that out of 850 applicants, only 47 are going to be interviewed. So that is an achievement in its own.
Firstly, I would like to point out that there's no hard and fast rule. There can be like more than 1,500 applicants or 500. So, like in our year, more than 850 applied. And of those, 846 were shortlisted for an interview. So, I think it just depends on each year's application round and how
Yeah.
many people apply, firstly. Secondly, I would also like to point out that this in the interview, while your interview, the case law that they ask you is going to be primarily on the content that you have written, but they're not bound by your application in any way. Like, for example, in my application, I had not written about anything as to how you file like a revision. And I was asked, "Ki, Acha, you have done 2 years of litigation, so like, tell us about how a review is filed or how a revision is filed." So while I had not spoken about it in my application, I had to tell all of that as well because I was claiming that I had done 2 years of litigation. So anyone who
Exactly.
has done 2 years of litigation should know those things. So you can't lie on your application because
Exactly.
the
That's
chances are that you're going to be caught because they will ask you questions that you should know if you're claiming to have done a certain thing.
And also you're also in front of, again, senior Supreme Court judges who
exactly.
are used to grilling the best lawyers on everything every single day. So they can see
Exactly.
through every little thing that you're saying. So you have to
Yeah.
keep that in mind. But my big for the interview is actually silly, but just relax. Because at the end of the day,
Yeah.
when you walk into that interview, uh, it's very easy to forget that Supreme Court judges, and that's another big thing this job tells you, that Supreme Court judges are also people. Like,
Yeah.
they like someone who can conversation, who isn't too awkward, doesn't make them feel out of place. So honestly, just relax. And someone at the Supreme Court has given Alizeh and I and a bunch of the rest of us a great piece of advice. When you're in a hole, stop digging. So if you feel like you don't know something, it's all right to just say that you don't know it. In fact, a big part of this role is saying to your, like, when you're working with your judge and they ask you something, saying, I actually don't know the answer to that question, but I'll figure it out and get back to you. They really respect that honesty because they, like, you pretending like you know what you're talking about only slows their work down. So
Absolutely.
so the best way to succeed in the interview is, if they ask you something you don't know, say, I don't know, but I'll learn, or I don't
Yeah.
know, but I can get back to you on it.
That is a very
Because
positive approach. That is a very positive approach.
exactly,
Yeah.
because
And
they,
but generally also, I think that they try to make you feel
yeah.
comfortable because I remember when I walked in, one of the judges that went to interview me was like, "Oh, आपके कितने बहन भाई हैं? Oh, do you want to move to Islamabad? Or will you be able to move to Islam?" So they're trying to ask you questions also to make you feel comfortable,
Yeah.
but also then they're free to do whatever they want to in the interview. So there's no hard and fast rule.
Yeah.
It's kind of, but you should try to lead the conversation,
Yeah.
as in that's true for all interviews. that you ever take as lawyers or any other profession, that you should try and lead the conversation when you're giving an interview, so that you decide the direction that that conversation goes in.
That,
So you kind of have some control as
yeah.
to the impression that you leave.
Yeah. And also don't feel like you can't ask them questions, don't feel
Mhm.
like you can't counter things that they're saying, because again, a big part of this role is being a contrarian, is challenging something that your judge is saying or a question that they're asking you. I'm not saying be aggressive about it, but if you feel like they've asked you a question, the premise of which is wrong, ask them why, like, why the premise is what it is and why it's not this
Hmm.
other thing. So having that kind of quick thinking and being adaptable in that environment is so important. I'd argue that the interview matters infinitely more than your application. Your application just really gets you through the door.
Yeah.
But having said all of this, making the interview sound very, very intimidating,
Yeah.
the interview itself is also a very enjoyable, enriching experience. Like, don't forget to enjoy it, because how often are you, as a basically never, as a young law grad, in a room
Yeah.
with two Supreme Court judges where they're asking you things and engaging with you? It's a very, very empowering and actually pleasant experience. So
Yeah.
don't forget to lean into it, and don't forget, if you are shortlisted, to actually enjoy the process. And the biggest tip, other than like relaxing and everything, is be nice, because
Yeah.
that actually reflects really well on you. So when you meet the coordinators, be nice to them. When you meet the judges, be polite, say please, say thank you for your time, things like that. Those don't go unnoticed.
Yeah.
And again,
Yeah.
there's a lot of thought tarika in this job. There's the right way to do things. There's a lot of staff in this building. Being nice to people is 50% of your role as a law clerk at the Supreme Court.
And it is the body language and the how the
Yeah,
way that you're carrying yourself in the courtroom or in the interview room. It is it speaks a lot about you.
yeah, yeah.
So when is so since the application deadline is going to be at 11:59 p.m.
On
on the
Wednesday, yes.
second of August. So when is the interview to be expected? How
So
long does the process take?
it's an arduous shortlisting process, because contrary to popular belief, the coordinators read every essay, every recommendation. They go through your application with a fine-tooth comb. So it really depends on how long that takes. And also, right now, summer vacations are ongoing, so it really depends on the availability of the judges that are the co-chairs of the clerkship committee.
उस पे करना था ना सारे. Okay. All right. So, I'm sorry, the interview is going to take place after how much time exactly? I had to talk to someone.
So
Yeah.
I can't uh, I can't, Alizeh can't, we can't really say, because that's really up to the discretion of the committee. All I can say is right now that summer vacations are ongoing at the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
So it really depends on the availability of the judges who are on the committee. It
All
has
right.
nothing to do with anything else.
All right. And this, the duration of this program is 1 year.
Yeah, so it's a 1 year contract, extendable to 2 years. Um,
Okay.
but that extension
And
only
I've
happens if
also
you,
heard that they have a very handsome stipend.
yeah,
They actually don't. Can I just say, especially for people who are moving from outside of
yeah,
Islamabad, it's for people who are from Islamabad, sure, because as young graduates, you don't make this kind
Not
of
at
money.
all.
yeah,
No, so the official stipend that we're told for now is 90,000,
Mhm.
which is great for a young graduate who's like just starting off in their career and are from Islamabad. But people who are moving in to Islamabad from other cities, it might be difficult for them to manage, but you can manage. It's an amount that you
yeah.
can manage within.
Yeah, and also
So
the
I think
experience that you're gaining I don't think it has a price. The experience that you're
Yeah.
gaining becoming a law clerk, so you can, like, try to make ends meet, and just, get
Yeah,
done with this 1 year, and you can have the doors open for you after this 1 year.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Like, I
but
think
I
that's
think
one
it's
of the
very
things.
important. Sorry to cut you off, Alizeh, that the stipend is there and that it is what it is, because this is not, and this is something I think is important to mention. This is not just a role that is for people who are privileged. Like, people come from all over to be part of the Supreme Court Clerkship program. And there's this almost necessity to say that the experience pays enough, but really it only pays enough for people who have families who can afford to send their like kid to another city and pay for them to live there. So, or like you do another job. Uh, so it's important that the stipend is there, because it
Yeah,
makes this program accessible to a wider range of people, and it stops it
exactly.
being something that perpetuates uh, privilege within the legal community, which is already such a problem.
Yeah, true.
As for the duration of the clerkship, while we initially sign a 1 year contract, some judges, if they really like your work, will offer you an extension. That has to come from your judge. If they want to have you around for another year, they will make a request to that effect. And then, if you want to, you can stay for another year.
As
So,
the law,
Yeah.
as a
or
law
did
clerk,
you promote it?
no, no, as a law clerk, there's no
As a law.
promotion. This
All right.
is this
Okay.
is it.
Okay,
But
this
I
is.
think a lot of people initially, when they start, come with the mindset that they're going to stick around for 1 year only. But then in that 1 year, they realize that this is such a wonderful opportunity that they will never get to experience again.
Yeah.
And then they're like, okay, the litigation part, or going to back to a law firm, or doing transactional in house, whatever their plan is, they realize that that is something they're going to do for a long, long time. So spending a couple of more months or a year for this program, an opportunity that they will never get to experience again, is something that tends to happen quite often. So on an average, I would say law clerks tend to stay for a second year. That is provided that their judge likes them enough to offer them that in the first
All
place.
right. Okay.
Yeah.
All
Before,
right.
I also think we should at some point discuss like some tips and tricks for the application, because I've been
Of
getting
course.
so many messages on LinkedIn, and there's so many like basic questions that I think we should
I
address.
think we should. We should. We definitely should.
So, Neha, can I go first if
Go ahead, go
you don't
ahead.
mind? So I think, and I will keep in mind all of the questions that I've been getting on LinkedIn, and I am so happy that so many of those are from people that are at TMUC presently. I think, yes, Neha has also commented application process. So I think one of the biggest tips that I can give for the personal statement is that try and not reproduce your CV. The application is so detailed itself that you're covering each and every aspect of your CV. And if I'm not wrong, you also have to attach your CV with your application as well.
Okay.
So that's like you've already given everything, like your experience and all of that in your application and then in your CV. So there's no point of rewriting all of that in the paragraph form in your in your personal statement.
All
For
right.
me, for example, when I was writing my personal statement, I there are three questions that they ask, and I tried to narrate a story and make it an interesting read. You have to keep in mind that the committee will get about 1,000 applications, and if
Mm-hmm.
your application is not something that stands out, it's not like it might not make the cut. So you also have to keep in mind that every answer, every question that you attempt, that the committee is going to read over 1,000 applications.
Yeah.
So you should make your personal statement an interesting read. That's something that acha they want to read and see कि अच्छा what's this person saying and what is this about. अगर आपने अपनी CV ही reproduce करनी है, that's waste of space in my opinion. You should
Yeah.
take that space to really show who you are, talk about skills or characteristics of yourself that you don't think are otherwise being, that's standing out in your application. So I, for example, wrote a story of an incident that happened at my law firm. and
Okay.
I answered all three questions with that story, and I tried to make it a good read because I had in mind that the committee is going to be reading so many applicants, so many applications, and if this is boring, they're just going to be like, "Acha, next."
Yeah.
For the questions, I would say that you should do as much research as possible. Go to a law library. High courts की जो library होती हैं, those are accessible by junior lawyers as well. Just go to a high court library. Do as much research as you can. Again, like I've said before, कि आप लोग application के लिए सिर्फ नहीं कर रहे अपनी research. You're also doing your research for your late interview stage later on. I had my notepad with me जिसमें मैंने सारे notes बनाए हुए थे that I had made during my research phase of my application. And later on, I took that notebook with me in the interview, and I could not remember like a certain judgment ka naam. And I asked the judges, is it okay if I look at the name of the judgment? And they were like, cool, because memory test nahi tha wo. They
Uh-huh.
just wanted to know if I've made an effort to actually do the
Effort. Absolutely. Absolutely.
so I would say कि अपनी research जितनी like that's what they're trying to actually see. आपकी research, your analytical skills, your writing skills are what they. I'm so sorry. So like these are the skills that they're actually trying to see. So आप लोगों ने एक academic essay नहीं लिखना. You need to make sure कि आपके answers के अंदर there's a you element. You're analyzing the thing to answer
Yeah.
the question. अगर आपने वही रटी रटाई चीज लिख दी, that's content that other 1,000 people have as well. So आप
Exactly.
आंसर कोई स्टैंड आउट नहीं करेगा अगर आप बस बेसिक जवाब लिख दोगे कि ये लॉ था, ये जजमेंट. नो, दे वांट टू सी कि ये तो हमें पता है, एंड कमेटी को पता है क्या लॉ है और पता है क्या केस लॉ है. दे वांट टू सी हाउ आर यू answering the question, how you analyzing the issue
Where
before
are
you.
you standing out actually?
Where are
What
you
makes
standing
you
out?
stand out?
You
Also,
have to
I have a very
yes.
short question before we move on further. It's just that the application process, the questions included in the application process, are they similar for each person or do they change somehow?
No, no,
Are they
they're all
exactly?
same.
They're
The
all the same?
application, yes, application has four questions
Yeah.
and one personal statement, and
Okay.
everyone has the same application.
All right. Okay.
And just
Yeah.
generally make sure कि typos मत हो आपकी applications पे. आपने
And
chat
friends do not sit together to, fill the application
the
process,
thing is, this is what I
questions
was going to
उनके
say.
लिख
This
रहे
is what I,
हो.
exactly. This is what I was going to say, that आपके पास जो content है, जो research है, अगर आपने बहुत ज़्यादा research नहीं की, या आपने like वो basic research सबके पास है. Keep that in mind. The content of your basic research, other 1,000 people have it too. सो यू हैव टू डू योर रिसर्च टू दैट लेवल कि ये लोग इस पॉइंट तक लोग कर लेंगे, इसके बाद वाली जो है इज व्हाट्स गोइंग टू मेक मी स्टैंड आउट.
Yeah.
सिमिलरली फॉर योर आंसर, जब आप एक एकेडमिक सा आंसर लिख देते हो, दैट समथिंग that is content that everyone has. So to take it to the next level, you have to add stuff that you think is going to make your application stand out.
Yeah.
And generally don't make typos. Don't like font अपना देख लो. Like since an online application, कहीं पे आपने 10 font use किया हुआ है, कहीं पे 14. Like stop, like small things like these, like presentation of your work matters. Like if you can't like m- make your application uniform and there are typos, that does not reflect nicely on you at all.
And are you supposed to attach any of your academic qualifications, such as your OA level results or anything with the application process, with the application online?
Neha, please go ahead.
Yeah, so any document that you've relied on in your application, so that's your O-level documents, if you've mentioned those, your university transcripts, your graduation certificates, things like that. Anything you
Yeah.
mentioned in your application, you need to document. So we have, like, the committee has proof of it. I'm saying we as if I
I
am the
know.
committee, but it's not me. So, like, you have to document everything. And I remember this was actually a big task when I was filling out my application, is that making sure that every single like every single thing I refer to is there. And if something's not there, then the extenuating circumstances section of my application, I mentioned I don't have this document for X reason. So you have to
Okay.
like,
So you need to
you
have supporting evidence of
yeah,
everything that you're claiming to have done,
yeah.
such as any kind of
And
internships
also
or
with
any
you're
certificate.
also supposed to, for example, with your references, give the information of your references, phone numbers and stuff. And the committee reserves the right, I believe, to call them and confirm that they've written the. Also,
All
another
right.
problem that a lot of applicants have is they, instead of submitting references, they submit character references, wo jo court deta hai.
Uh,
The ones that just says is fit and able,
yeah, yeah,
things
yeah.
like that.
That's
Though that's not a reference. You need someone who actually knows your working style
and
and
you've
can
kind of
detail
worked
that.
under them. They know about your character and your punctuality and your, everything that you've done working under them, right? Am I audible?
Yes, I mean, yes, you are. I think yes, that's important, right? So a character certificate for your licenses is really different. It's like a one-line thing, whereas the purpose, you need to understand the purpose of the reference. You want somebody who has worked with you, or like you have worked under them. So they will be telling like this applicant how well they are, and that's a detailed thing. It's a personal thing. So
Yes.
I think references are important. They go a long way and they are to be taken seriously. Who writes your recommendation? This is one question that I think I've been asked a lot, is that कि recommendation किससे लिखवाएं? So I think recommendation people are trying to get senior lawyers, like very very like big names, to write their references, which I think could be counterproductive, because if not worked closely in that capacity with that big name senior lawyer,
Yeah.
they will not be able to really write about you, and that's going to become really obvious. अगर उन्होंने आपके बारे में लिखा है और वो बहुत general है and not things that are specifically about you,
Hmm.
that's really not a solid
That is not.
reference in line.
Yeah.
So अगर आप किसी ऐसे वकील से भी लिखवा रहे हैं जो in the industry is not that big a name but has worked closely with you and is willing to vouch for you, that's stronger than having a
Yeah.
senior
And
lawyer
they
write it
also
to
have
you.
to, yeah, they also have to know you a minimum of 1 year, the referee, according to the
All right.
application. So
And can it be
that's
your
another
teacher?
thing.
For example, for
Yeah,
fresh graduates, can it be your teacher?
yeah. It
Okay.
can be an academic reference.
All right. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So, since we've covered everything about the application, I believe, right?
Yes, I
All
guess
right.
so.
So,
Yeah, just about.
before we end this, I think Mr. Furqan did not get his signals back. So,
Okay.
I'd like to ask you about any sort of challenges that you faced during work. What are the kind of
uh,
challenges that you're going to expect working in the Supreme?
I think so. The one of something we should have mentioned earlier is that every chamber works
Yeah.
differently. Every judge has their own working style. All of the law clerks actually have really, really different jobs. All of us are working for different people, so our working styles, our challenges are all different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for example, if I have to be at the Supreme Court at 8 in the morning, somebody else might, sorry, at 9 in the morning, somebody else might be required to be in the Supreme Court by 8. And if I am leaving by 5, somebody else maybe is leaving at like 10 at night.
Yeah.
So everyone has their own working hours and working style and work requirements. So I think इसका कोई एक general answer नहीं है.
Yeah.
But general challenges are that it's a very high risk environment all the time. The stakes are so high that you're working at the Supreme Court, writing judgments that are like the final, like that's the end to litigation. So finality of judgments is like a big pressure on your head all the time. कि अच्छा,
I
this
can
has to be.
understand.
So research में you can't leave anything,
Yeah.
like nothing
Yeah.
can be left unattended to.
All right.
So I think that's maybe it. Neha, Neha, is there something else you
Uh,
think can be added?
I actually think the big thing that we haven't talked about is what kind of environment this is.
Yes.
So, for example, the Supreme Court has been in the news a lot since that suo moto happened in February, and all I can say is there's days where you leave feeling really good about yourself and you're fine and you're happy and you can go meet someone and you can have a good evening. But then there's also days when you leave this job and you go home and cry because of how stressful it is and what's going on. Um, so that's one of the big challenges of the role, is that you something like insane could be happening in my chamber, for example, but you can't go away and talk to anyone about it. There is no one who understands the stresses of this role other than other law clerks. So
Yeah.
that can be a really hard thing to overcome,
Yeah.
especially if you're young, especially because it's also a bit like a lot of the role is personality management. The Supreme Court judges, they're all, and I love to say this, they're all big personalities. They're all very unique. They all have different working styles. Like, for example, Alizeh and I, our work has absolutely no overlap. Our schedules are completely different. So it can be really hard to find someone, find anyone, not even someone who can like relate to what's
Yeah.
going on. Um,
Exactly.
Especially when these big constitutional crises are going on and like the Supreme Court is in the press and there's all these conversations happening about what's going on behind closed doors, who's like which judge is talking to which judge. That can
Yeah.
be very, very stressful and it's not for everyone. You have to be
Exactly.
very
And then
careful about who you talk to.
maintaining that confidentiality from your friends and your family. And you have a completely different world inside the Supreme Court. And
Yeah,
you
yeah,
leave all of that behind before your off timings. So, and you need to maintain that confidentiality once you leave until you're
yeah,
back at the Supreme Court the next day. So that's also
yeah,
because what I do, because I'm also a working woman. So I do discuss what happened at work with my mother and my husband, and
yeah.
we're
It's
talking
that's
with each
normal. That's a
other.
normal
You
thing to
really
do.
need someone who you can talk to about work, but you have to let that go behind because this is very, very sensitive information.
Yeah.
So I think that's like a kudos to you for
And it's really
maintaining
funny
this.
actually because sometimes we'll hang out after work, like we'll go do something or we'll go over to someone's house for dinner, and one of the clerks will come in looking like they're about to burst into tears. And when you ask them, like, is everything okay? They literally just go, can't talk about it.
I know, I know, I know that hurts actually. Just even imagining that.
So
All right.
it's not an easy job by any
Yeah,
stretch of
it's
the
not.
imagination.
It's a lot of responsibility. It's a lot of empowerment, and it's suddenly
Yeah.
like how LLB graduates are. They're like, oh wow, we're going to be the next lawyers, and now we're going to go to the courts, and we're going to have like our own
Yeah.
advocate cards and all
And
that. And
there's definitely an element of that. Like
yeah,
when we first came, I remember every day, like the first month or two, I would come into the Supreme Court building and Alizeh and I would be walking around and I turned to her and go, we're just allowed to be here? Like it's fine that we're here, it's fine that we're hanging out here, it's not a problem. And that took a while to get used
yeah,
to.
yeah,
Plus the building itself is very daunting. There's a lot, and this is a big tip if anyone actually gets this clerkship. um, the staff is the backbone of the Supreme Court.
I'm
Like, be
sure.
nice to absolutely everyone.
I'm sure.
They really are the people who make this building run. And literally, the judges would not be able to get anything done if it wasn't for this literal army of staff
Yeah,
that they have supporting them.
absolutely, absolutely. All right, so I think we're past 1 hour into our session, and if there is anything that you would like our students to know, our prospective law clerks to know about the program, anything that we've missed, I think we've covered the application
I think
process.
we have covered the application process in detail. I would just like end this by saying that be genuine to your application, show
Yeah.
authenticity, and don't take this lightly or don't lie about stuff. Basic
Yeah.
things people should be doing anyway. I would just like to say, just follow these small little things and you will be fine.
And
It's a
also,
wonderful.
don't be intimidated by the process. Like, even if you think your grades aren't good enough, apply anyway. What's the worst that
Yeah,
will happen?
exactly, exactly. Just give it your best shot. You
It's
have
just give
two
it your
days.
best shot.
You have two
Because
days. It's
honestly,
ample
last
time.
year,
Yeah.
yeah, last year I applied thinking, oh, I'm not gonna get it. Then I was shortlisted, and I was shocked that I was shortlisted. Then I got the actual job, and I was shocked that I got the actual job. So you
Wow.
might actually surprise yourself throughout this process and appear. So just like take a
And
chance on yourself.
just generally I would also they say that don't try to be over efficient,
Hmm.
in the sense that if there's something not that the application does not ask for,
Yeah,
you
don't.
don't need to give it.
Exactly.
If they're not asking for your O levels grade, for example, you don't need to be over efficient and be like ye bhi le lenge, ye bhi le lenge. They have enough that they've asked for.
Exactly.
Don't over, just don't try to be a nuisance to the committee. They have a lot of work to do
And the more
anyway.
precise something is, I think it's very attractive.
Exactly. It's you should be able to write your stuff in like a very precise
Precise
manner
to the
and be
point.
make it
Yeah,
effective.
exactly.
Exactly.
All right. So I would like to thank Mr. Agha Furqan is not here with us. So I would begin my ending paragraph with thanking him for joining us all the way from Turkey. And I know there were signal disruptions, and that's why he had to, get cut off from us. Thank you so much, Miss Neha Makhdoom. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you
And
for
thank you for
having
your
me.
attention. Thank you so much, Miss Alizeh Akbar. I am so happy and I'm so proud of you. You are our TMUC alumni, and I am very proud that you're taking this with you wherever you're going. So,
Thank you so
thank you for joining us, and I wish all of our students best of luck. All of our graduates, this is a very good opportunity for you all. At least make a try, and complete the application process. It's going to be sent online. You have 2 days. That's an ample amount of time, and let's hope for the best. Prepare well for the interview once you're shortlisted. The interview, it's not going to eat you up in any way. It's just going to make you very strong, and like I said, making it to the interview is an achievement in its own. So just open up the website. This website is the Supreme Court of Pakistan website, right?
Yeah.
yeah.
So all the information is available over there, and head over to the website and apply away. All right, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so
I will be
much.
signing off.